Page 9 and 47, I believe. Yes, 9 and 47. And I'd like to welcome now to the meeting for their presentation the members of the Aotearoa Collective for Public Transport Equity, and they are Kathy Riley, Francesca Frandy, Michaela Fata, Yasmin Kidd, and Michaela Muhandan. And we have them with us all, I think. I can see Michaela for sure, and Francesca, and others. So I'm not sure who I'm handing to, but I will allow the group to identify who their lead might be. We've got your presentation. It's on Nexus members, and it's also on our screens, and I'll hand to the group right now. Kia ora and welcome.
Kia ora. Mauri ora ki te rangi, mauri ora ki te whenua, mauri ora ki ngā tangata katoa, ngā mihi ki ngā iwi katoa o Tamaki Makaurau, ngā mihi ki ngā kai ko nihira o Tamaki Makaurau, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ko wai mātou. As you've mentioned, we are the Auckland organisers of the Aotearoa Collective for Public Transport Equity, who are the ones behind the Free Fares campaign. Our coalition is made up of 70 plus organisations, including a number of student unions, trade unions, faith communities, social services and climate action groups. Our main focus is that we are calling on central government to implement free public transport nationwide for our key groups, tertiary students, community services card holders, under 25s, and what's not there is also total mobility card holders and their support people. So my name is Kathy B. Riley. I'm the Sustainability Field Worker for the Auckland Anglican Diocese, and our diocese is a member of this coalition. We are asking Auckland Council specifically to pass a formal resolution of support for our campaign and to vote in favour of the LGNZ remit that Porirua City Council will be putting forward later this year, calling on central government to fund free public transport for the targeted groups that we've mentioned. Other councils, such as Bay of Plenty and Canterbury, are trialling their own targeted subsidies, and we do hope that Auckland Council would consider exploring something similar, although that's not the main purpose of our campaign. We see that this fits with the climate change declaration that you guys made, which states that the council will continue to provide strong local government leadership in the face of climate change, including working with local central government partners to ensure a collaborative response. I'll pass on to Yasmin.
Kia ora, I'm Yasmin Kidd. I'm a member of Generation Zero and a student at University of Auckland studying a Bachelor of Urban Planning. So we see free fares as important in creating the mode shift required to reduce our carbon emission, while also addressing equity and transport poverty. Mode shift away from vehicle use is better for the climate and for our city. Transport makes up 40% of Auckland's emissions. Free fares can create public transport users for life. Studies of free fare schemes internationally show good uptake of public transport among young people. Positive experiences at a young age create lasting patterns of transport behaviour. According to the RNZ article published on May 11th, all over New Zealand, we are seeing an increase in public transport use with a temporary half-price fares, especially in Auckland, where we see a 50% increase in public transport use despite the ongoing disruptions from the pandemic. I'll pass over to Michaela.
Kia ora, my name is Michaela Footer and I'm a student at Mass University and an elected student rep for the Albany Student Association. I'm a young student on a student allowance of $300, living 3 zones from university. Being able to save approximately $50 a week in public transport is a big deal. Auckland has several university campuses throughout our city with students commuting all over Auckland. Even in central areas where there are good public transport services, affordability is still a big challenge. There are university students who have missed important classes or had to pull out of a course altogether because they're unable to afford the transport cost. With half-price fares, I currently save $21. That's enough to buy a loaf of bread, a 2-litre bowl of milk, 3 cans of baked beans, and 1 kilo of each apples, bananas, potatoes, and onions. at my local supermarket. Alternatively, this would also pay for my monthly water bill. I shouldn't have to choose between putting food on the table or attending my lectures. Furthermore, many students are not eligible for community service cards and therefore they cannot get continued half-price fares. I'll now pass over to Fran.
Talafalava whānau. My name is Francesca Frandy. I'm an MIT staff member and alumni of MIT and 2021 MIT Student Council, with MIT joining the Free Fares Campaign Coalition as of last year. As a single parent living in Otara, raising 2 kids, general free fares for all young people would mean not worrying about bus fares, as this is our main form of transport. I like taking my kids on trips, but rarely do this because of the almost $50 on fares we spend on an already tight budget. Through my travels on public transport, I'm seeing more and more children and parents rely mainly on public transport. We know that public transport affordability must go hand in hand with good quality, good frequency of services in order to achieve the mode shift and equity that we wish to see. We are encouraged by the public transport investments in Budget 2022, electrification of public transport, investing in our drivers. These are all important things. However, we are disappointed that it does not go far enough to really address affordability, especially for children, where in some cases they could end up paying more than their parents for fares. After years of underinvestment into our public transport and the urgency of the climate crisis, the approach has to be an investment into all areas. I'll pass it over to Kathy.
So the temporary half price that we see right now demonstrates that a more affordable public transport is possible, and it does make a big difference. Based on the government's estimate of the 3 months free fares, half price fares, it was about 24 to 40 million. If we extrapolate this per year, it might cost 192 to 320 million per year for everyone to have free fares. So if we had a targeted approach, it would cost about a fraction of this. If Auckland Council were to decide to do a pilot of free fares for children and tutoring students, it might cost around $41 million a year based on 2019 figures before the pandemic. If it was just targeting children, it might be $20 million a year. If central government were to fund free fares, it would be a fraction of the 3.5 billion revenue of Waka Kotahi. I'll pass it back to Michaela to conclude.
So in summary, as a collective, we've presented a petition with 13,000 signatures to Minister Michael Wood. There are 9 local councils who have joined our coalition already. Our hope is that Auckland Council will do the same and vote yes for the Free Fares Local Government New Zealand remit. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Well done, and thank you so much. We've got a few questions, I'm sure, coming in. To kick things off, can I ask just what consideration has been given to those in trades training? You're identifying tertiary students, but of course there's a lot of young New Zealanders that aren't fully employed. They might be part-time employed or not employed that are undergoing trades training. Does your proposal capture that cohort as well, in addition to tertiary students?
Depending on their age, what we've asked for is under 25s to be included as part of the targeted group. So we think for a lot of those young ones, they would be included, but we're not sure how the qualifications fit in terms of those who are older than 25 doing apprenticeships. So yeah, we haven't looked into that, but it's a good point to raise. We can explore that further.
Okay, work in progress, and that's good to hear. I'll go to Councillor Watson. Councillor Watson, your question, please.
Yeah, thanks, and thank you, Kathy, Yasmin, Michaela, and Francesca. That was a really excellent presentation that we received there. You presented some quite compelling evidence in terms of the success of your proposal in terms of free fares in the Bay of Plenty and also internationally, which has resulted in some pretty dramatic increases in PT patronage. You're looking from us for a formal resolution of support and both in terms of the request to the government and local government resolution. As far as the pilot that Auckland Council, might be able to take up of its own volition, apart from those other requests. Do you have any suggestions there as to what form that pilot might take? I mean, we've got the kind of half price fares at the moment that are being successful. Do you see any component there that Auckland Council could show a bit of initiative in and reach out and perhaps showcase the success that has occurred elsewhere in the country and overseas with similar type of initiatives?
Thank you, Councillor. Who might fetch that question? Whose game? Did it come through okay?
Well, I guess I just you mentioned the free fares for children in the Bay of Plenty, which increased PT by 40%. Ideally, the council will support this application, and the government conceivably take it up, but often that's a slow process. But would that Bay of Plenty model, for instance, be one that would meet your kind of expectations as far as that pilot goes?
So obviously as a nationwide campaign, this isn't something that we have been targeting, but I feel, for example, in Canterbury, as I mentioned, the council took up the opportunity while they were, looking at a raft of different new policies to implement, to include what I think they've gone for, the one which is like $2 flat fares for everyone, $1 for our targeted group. I mean, obviously, we would love to see council fully implement our ask, which is the targeted fares for the 4 groups that we mentioned, or any adaptation of that. Obviously, the community services card is being targeted in some ways by the central government continuation of the free fares. So perhaps children is the area to target. But for us, we would love to see whatever capacity Auckland Council has to really address targeted subsidies for the groups that we've listed, we think is a worthwhile exploration. Environment Canterbury, they looked at a raft of different options and put it out to the public for consultation. That could be a good approach potentially as well. But we think, Auckland Council is such a leader in terms of other councils are looking to what Auckland does, and I think this is a great opportunity for an investigation into what's possible.
Thank you, Kathy, and happy to move the recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and now we'll go to Member Henare, please.
Kia ora, me te tei kia koe te aku rangatira tēnā koutou. Tēnā koe te o koutou kōrero I tēnei ata, no reira ngā mihi. To the sister from Otara, it's always a pleasure to see somebody from my old hood coming before the council. I just really got one question, and that is that do you think that it's difficult to just have free fares for different groups? I mean, shouldn't we be saying free fares for everybody? It makes it a hell of a lot simpler. It makes it a hell of a lot easier to define, what the cost is going to be. And it also means that people who aren't on your list don't feel left out of the equation. Kia ora.
Who would like to take that one?
Definitely,
Francesca?
sorry. Yes, that is definitely our goal, is to have everyone underneath the umbrella of getting free fares. But for now, just taking it little bit by little bit and just recognising these major groups, and then hopefully we bring everyone else underneath. I mean, I'd love to see everyone here in Otara on the bus.
Fantastic. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Cashmore. Sorry, just go back to you, Member Henare. Did I cut you short then, Member Henare? Did you have a supplementary?
No. I was just saying thank you to the team.
Kia ora. Deputy Mayor.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well done. Good presentation. My question to you, and I also asked this when I got the phone call, was the percentage of, excuse me, the percentage of people who fall into your category as compared to the total. I note on the slide 4, you've got the numbers for children, secondary schools and tertiary. What does that represent as a percentage of total PT users?
Who would be armed to answer that one?
So
Kathy.
we didn't get the figure. We do, so in terms of total, that's a really good point. What we do know in terms of revenue compared to AT, Auckland Transport's total revenue, it was about a fifth from those groups specifically. But yes, we haven't quite compared it. I mean, the easiest way to look at it would probably number of hot cards and hot card users, and we've got it for those groups, but haven't compared it to the overall. Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll dig that data up, Mr. Chair, find out what it is. I think that's an important figure. And the second point would be to maximise the effects of climate change. I'd be interested in seeing the data on free fares for all, or a 75% subsidy for all, and everyone paying 25%. But there's got to be. I get what you're trying to achieve, no matter what is the actual package is the end result that gives the best bang for our environment, for reducing congestion, and for more affordability for PT transport. So yeah, thank you for your work and thank you for your advocacy. It's much appreciated.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I now have a question from Councillor Hills.
Kia ora, and thank you all for this work, and a number of us have been trying to fight this fight sort of unsuccessfully for a while, and I guess the issue for us is funding in the way that we are able to access funds and the need to use fares to improve the system at the same time. I guess two questions. One, have you had any response from government so far? And two, I guess, how do you, if we don't get support from government with funding, how do you see us weighing up providing the services to those who don't have it, or giving free fares? Because that's unfortunately the pickle we're in if government doesn't help us with this sort of fantastic campaign. And congratulations on the campaign.
Who might take that question from Councillor Hills? Kathy, looks like you're burning to go at it.
Yeah, sorry, just been crunching the figures this week. So I guess we see the dilemma, and just to give some context, our campaign arose out of conversations initially started with Wellington Regional Council. I mean, I wasn't involved, I'm based in Auckland, and we all are, and the realisation that the way the funding works is really difficult for local governments to fundraise for such initiatives as this, and so that's why we made the choice to target nationwide and central government in particular. Conversations have been really positive, so we have spoken with politicians from across the political spectrum, and some even from national supportive of something along this line, although not our exact ask, or they can't commit. And our conversations, so we've met with obviously Minister Michael Wood and also Minister Grant Robertson, and they were both really positive and supportive, but again, tight-lipped. We had hoped for more from this year's budget because that was the target of our petition, but we're yet to be heard by the Petition Select Committee. So that will be another crunch point for us to be able to present the case again and hope to push for something in next year's budget. In terms of alternative sources of funding, we know obviously Auckland Council has the climate targeted rates, and that's just been a process that's gone through. I'm not too sure what the wriggle room for something like that is, because that's how Bay of Plenty and Canterbury, Environment Canterbury have funded their pilots. I know there's conversations in Auckland about congestion charges, which is, I'm not so familiar with the impacts of that, or if that is an option for raising funds. So yeah, I understand the predicament, and so that's why we're really pushing for Auckland Council, for central government to fund this. But we really hope that if more councils are doing pilots and can demonstrate the the effectiveness of subsidised fares, then that could bring in a stronger argument and a stronger push. You know, our conversations with the national MPs, they're always about, you know, where are the figures about the effectiveness of this? And if we can't demonstrate that until we've had pilots that showcase the meaningful mode shift we can get. So yeah, that's probably where we're up to.
Kia ora, thank you, and thanks for the constructive way you're doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hills, and thank you, Kathy. I'll now take the final question from Councillor Bartley. No, there's no question from Councillor Bartley. Thank you to you all. This is a great initiative, and I really acknowledge on behalf of the committee, just acknowledge the incredible effort that you've put into this, not just here in Auckland, but nationwide. I'm very aware of your campaign. I've been following it, and I really take my hat off to you. You all deserve to take a bow. We will refer this to Auckland Transport. Now, you may see that as a bit of a, not the response that maybe you've wanted from the council here today, but we don't have a report in front of us. We're not furnished with information from Auckland Transport or from our own Auckland Council Transport Strategy Unit to inform a robust and enduring decision. But this is a topic that we are all very aware of course, on the back of Minister Michael Wood, the Minister of Transport's direction on half-price fares that have now been extended by a couple of months. So once we see some analysis of that, and that will be done at the, I expect, Ministry of Transport, Waka Kotahi, Auckland Transport as well. I think we'll learn a lot out of that, out of the pros and cons of that. If there are any cons, I'm sure it's loaded with pros. And we can learn out of that experiment and take into account proposals like your own. Of course, Council, here at Auckland Council, we're not coming to this cold. We were instrumental in a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, I think it is now, introducing under 16s, fare-free weekends for under 16s, and we were instrumental in urging the Minister to look at community services card holders travelling at initially 50% off. Now, that has been taken up. We have got a very willing Minister. I think I can say that you've got a very willing Council here in Auckland to look at this a lot harder, and we hear the call of our young people to make it more affordable, to climb aboard bus, train and ferry and embed really good travel habits that last a lifetime. So thank you to the collective.
Chair,
we are
Chair,
very, very grateful.
Chair, can I?
Member Henry.
Sorry, Chair, can I, after all of those platitudes from you about the wonderfulness of the scheme, maybe we should run around the table and say and see who supports free fares instead of shunting it off to the to Auckland Transport, because I think that's a bit of a cop out, to be honest. I'd certainly like us for us to say thank you for your presentation, and yes, we support you. The Planning Committee supports free fares. How about that?
So thanks.
And then we can put it to Auckland Transport.
So thanks, Member Henry. As the chair of this committee, I don't have the information. None of us have the information in front of us to make that call. And that is what I'm highlighting to the collective here today. This is by no means a shut the gate on your proposal. I think there's a real willingness around the table. But Member Henry, you don't have any information, and I don't have any information. None of the
No, I
committee
have
members
plenty of
do.
information, Mr. Chair.
Okay, just a minute, please, Member Henry. Thank you. So the motion is before us, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Watson.
Just to follow on from Member Henry there, there's three specific requests that were made in the presentation today.
So can I just make it, just before you carry on, Councillor Watson, the motion is before us, so it's now a speaking turn, and I'll take this as a speaking turn.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so we had three specific requests that were made of us in this presentation. One going to a formal resolution of support, one going to supporting a remit at the Local Government New Zealand conference, and the third and final one going to a trial of some nature that Auckland Council might initiate. So we had those three requests. What I see in the resolution is just a reference to referring the presentation and information to Auckland Transport. The subsequent comment from yourself, as Member Henare quite correctly commented on, doesn't suggest anything that will be forthcoming in terms of addressing those specific requests that were made to the committee. So for my part, I'm happy for the presentation information to go to Auckland Transport, but I am assuming, and indeed the presentation request, that there therefore, as a consequence of that, be some response back to the Planning Committee so that it can act, if it chooses to do so, the three specific requests that go to the formal resolution, which I am more than happy to support. Similarly, with the Local Government New Zealand remit, indeed, if your own commentary, particularly the latter part, was to be taken as a reflection of the committee, there should be no problem doing both those two things. The only one where there might be this further information that would be of use as it goes to any pilot or trial. So I think the resolution as it stands, unless there is a report or a response back to this planning committee, doesn't meet the basics of the request. As Member Henare said, you know, a series of platitudes is not what we're looking for. This was an excellent presentation. It made a number of specific requests, two of whom I see no impediment to acting upon, and the third, which may well benefit from that information being analysed in a little more detail by Auckland Transport. So for my part, I'm interested in something coming back to address those requests that were made that I think are very fair and reasonable, and a compelling case has been presented on. And that is what I will assume will be the outcome of that, in addition to the information that Auckland Transport might put together with respect of any trial that goes to the last request. I think that's only reasonable.
Okay, thank you. So there's probably some assumptions I'm making here. At the conclusion of the 50% off program on public transport fares that are being led by government, paid for by government, there will be some information coming in on that, and Auckland Transport will be contributing to that. We already have the position that we took to Local Government New Zealand, Councillor Papacoombe. Please correct me if I'm inaccurate here, but that is on our books, and it's also with Auckland Transport. They're very aware of it. But what I can do, members, is in addition to the B, we could identify a request for a report back, so requesting feedback on the proposal, and that feedback would be informed by this period of half-price fares that are running throughout the country at the moment. So we've got to do some analysis on that. But members, can I just remind you that our very own standing orders do not allow us to make a decision unless we have an agenda report of substance, if we're making a decision of substance. So these motions before us are fine. We're referring them to Auckland Transport for further for their consideration and feedback on the proposal. Councillor Walker, your call.
Sure. I just want to speak further to the comments that Councillor Watson made just a moment ago. The assumption that I'm making is that if we're looking to have a remit at Local Government New Zealand, that would be a decision or an agreed position that would need to come from Council, and I would assume this committee. So while we're referring things to Auckland Transport, is it implicit that there is going to be a report back to this committee that might consider relevant things to further it?
The motion as it stands.
Now, I'm making that as a.
Okay, you've asked that as a
I'm
question.
making that as a comment. So I'm making the assumption that this committee will be taking this up. If there's a need to make an amendment to that effect, I'm quite happy to do that. And that might be C, that a report be brought back to this committee that considers the recommendations made by the presenters, including a remit to Local Government New Zealand.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. If you read the resolution or the motion under B, that's what it actually says. And members, you'll recall that it was the Planning Committee that considered the discounted fares for under 16s. It was this committee. We considered that, and we will continue to have responsibility in that area. So there's been no further speakers. I'll put that to the vote.
Mr. Chair, when you first spoke, you said that you were willing to add a C that made explicit the expectation that there would be a report back to this committee from Auckland Transport. As it stands, all we've got is feedback. That's not really a report. So you, when you spoke in your turn, you said that you would be willing to add a C to that effect. So
okay,
I'd appreciate it if you did that.
Thank you. And the motions are before us. All those in favour say aye.
So
Aye.
hold on.
To the contrary,
Aye.
declare that
You
carried.
just said you were going to add a C. You've ignored that and proceeded
Councillor
to the vote.
Watson, order please.
Are you going to do a C or not?
We have, Councillor Watson, if you read the B, that's what it means. A report will be coming
okay.
back. Now,
So
we
feedback is a
we could
report,
have
is it?
a very pedantic wordsmithing of
No.
commas and underlines, but can you maybe trust
We had a
the
lot of
direction of the
platitudes from you.
committee?
That's what we had.
Point of
Not
order,
for a
Mr.
pedantic.
Chair.
Point of order,
You've made a
Councillor
ruling.
Desley Simpson? Sorry,
That
Councillor
wasn't
Cooper.
me, Chris. Chris, that
Sorry,
wasn't me,
Councillor
that was
Cooper.
Lydia. It's been put, Mr. Chair.
It has been
I put a motion, Mr.
It
Chair.
has been voted on, and the
Mr.
motion.
Chair, were you asking me something? You called my name.
Can we just have order? I know this is a hybrid meeting. We've had a great presentation from the Aotearoa Collective. Let's be grateful to them and convey to them our positive interest in taking this forward. Thank you to the collective. We've concluded the item. We'll now go to the next item.
And do we also convey
Order,
to them
please.
that the word
Order,
feedback
please.
also means report in terms of your comments, Mr. Chair? I think that's an important point to clarify before our presenters go.
Councillor Watson, I know
Yes.
what
Yes or
you're
no?
doing, Councillor Watson. It is actually not contributing in a constructive way in the remotest to the
Just
productivity of
answer
this
yes or
meeting.
no. It's a simple question.
We'll now go to local board input, and there is none. Extraordinary business, there is